Electronic. No. Has you voted, Julie? Ms. Coakley, how do you vote?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Coakley just voted?
She did.
Okay, she's voting electronic, so I don't have to call her name. Okay.
I was putting in the safe.
Has everyone voted?
Yes.
Has it posted? Is it posted? All right, I just want to make sure it's published so that everyone can see.
I think we're realizing how important Maggie is to this organization.
Show of hands, please, so we can move on. Show of hands.
Okay, while we're trying to figure that out, as we move forward, just to make sure that we're showing accuracy of the voting process, and we're going to do a roll call and just ask that you signify your vote and adoption of the agenda. Dr. Frazier? How did you vote?
Yes.
Dr. French?
Aye.
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Ms.
Yes.
Hatterett? Ms. Waters?
Yes.
There it is.
Done it.
All right, so I can't really see that part. What is it? 7 yay and 1 abstention.
Can you?
All right. All right, item 2A is public comments. Waters?
Mac. We do have several in-person public comments today. The first on the list is Lee Runyon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, later today, you have yet another special called meeting to address and take action relative to Attorney General Alan Wilson's letter to Charleston County School District that pointed out the likely illegal actions recently that took place in regards to the Freedom of Information Act. My concern is that this seems to be a recurring problem in Charleston County School District that needs to be solved by the board. It has been brought to the board's attention in 2017, 2019, and now in 2022. And each time corrective action has not become a tenet for operations. In the spring of 2019, WCSC reported that CCSD hired a specific employee in the Office of Communications who is still on staff today to address the numerous FOIA requests appropriately received by the district on a timely basis and to assist with FOIA compliance. This position has since cost the district over $150,000 annually through submitted contractual services for general operating fund payments as approved through the Office of Communications. Further, the Office of Communications has been allocated approximately $4 million annually of GOF funding, while the legal department has been budgeted approximately $1 million annually. So given an expenditure of $5 million per year of GOF funding, why are we seated here today set to hold a special called meeting to solve a problem that certainly should not exist given the dozens of salaried professionals and non-board members who surely have the capacity to simply follow the law? CCSD routinely is in receipt of numerous FOIA requests due to public questions for an organization funded by the people. 5 million GOF dollars are annually allocated to give the district excellent service and public communications and prudent legal advice. My question for you is, are we effectively spending GOF funds in these two departments And at board level, given the return on investment is the letter from the South Carolina Attorney General that you now need to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Kristen Lewis.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to share my experiences today. My name is Kristen Lewis. I'm the literacy coach at Morningside Middle School. This school year marks my 20th in education and 10th year at Morningside, and I wouldn't want to work anywhere else. My school is a place where scholars live in the productive struggle to become better readers, writers, thinkers, and speakers. This is the new Morningside, but it hasn't always been the Morningside I have known. We're an acceleration school, one identified by the state in need of serious improvement. We have been immersed in this great work for over 3 years, and today I've come to share with you one of several reasons our scholars are finally seeing success, and I think that's the EL curriculum. The process of curriculum adoption and implementation is not an easy one within schools. Reading comprehension depends more on background knowledge and academic vocabulary than comprehension skills. Scholars who start off with less foundational academic knowledge fall farther and farther behind if they are not working to acquire it. They need a comprehensive curriculum that actively works to build knowledge through content-rich lessons that include opportunities for them to read, write, think, listen, and speak. The EL curriculum builds scholars' academic knowledge and skills, habits of character, and capacity to create high-quality work. It is the best standards-based literacy program for Tier 1 instruction that I've ever seen, experienced, or taught. But you don't have to take my word for it. Ed Reports and Equip have both given the EL curriculum the highest of marks, but most importantly, our data speaks for itself. By winter map of last year, 48% of Morningside scholars had met or exceeded their growth goal for the year. Our data is finally comparative to that of the district average. We are currently waiting for the release of embargoed academic data, and we strongly believe that our teachers and scholars have worked hard to increase proficiency rates, close academic gaps, and achieve excellence and significant growth during the first year of implementation of EL. Things aren't always easy, but we are committed to the journey, to the transformation process of school improvement and implementing the EL curriculum with both fidelity and integrity. Our scholars deserve our very best every single day. Our scholars have always deserved this curriculum, a curriculum that empowers them, lifts every voice, and makes them proficient readers and writers.
Thank you.
Now that we've run it, one with it, watch us, watch Morningside. I promise you we are rising. Be proud of us.
Thank you. Next, we have Vanessa Alden. I'm sorry, Oldland. You're welcome.
Thank you, board, for this opportunity. My name is Vanessa Alden. I'm the reading coach at North Charleston Elementary. I'm here today to speak to the impact that our school community thus far has had as we enter year 2 of implementation of EL. Our scholars are thriving and growing exponentially, not only on standardized tests, but also toward being college and career ready. Our students are developing a love of learning that I have never seen in my 11 years at North Charleston Elementary. When we enter classrooms at our school, you see students engaged in learning and applying knowledge daily. Our students are reading more, they're writing more, and able to make deeper connections than ever before. This curriculum truly provides equitable and inclusive learning opportunities for all students. We've also seen transformational changes with our teachers. Teachers previously felt that what they were teaching didn't make a difference in their students' learning and achievement. With EL, they are able to see the transformation in students' learning each day. I'm here today to say that EL has transformed the lives of our students, faculty, and staff. Without it, I'm not sure we would be where we are today. Thank you again for letting me have this opportunity to share my passion for our school and EL.
Thank you. Next, we have Angela Page.
I'm Angela Page. I teach 4th grade at Shakora Elementary. The EL curriculum has been life-changing for my students as well as myself. Since using the EL curriculum, I have seen valuable growth in each of my students, both academically and socially. They went from being unengaged and reluctant to fully engaged and participating, and from bickering to being problem solvers. EL engages all students. EL achieves this through various activities and lessons. We speak so much of having our students being college and career ready. Well, EL is it. My students have learned how to collaborate with one another through partner and group discussions and work relating to unit content. I've seen these skills carry over to the non-academic side of school, where my students are using their problem-solving skills to respectfully resolve disputes amongst themselves and others. It makes my students think like they have never before. EL is rigorous. The rigor causes them to struggle with the work, but it is a productive struggle. EL brings learning to life using relevant, relatable content to teach reading skills. Students can see themselves in the content, which makes them want to learn more. The creativity of my students come alive through various assessment tasks. Assessments aren't just paper and pencil. They're also assessed by having to apply skills to a performance task. As a teacher, EL has forced me to adjust my teaching practices and strategies. I look for opportunities to bring more equity to lessons by bringing in artifacts, reworking graphic organizers, and providing extra background knowledge, just to name a few.
Thank you. Next, we have Sydney Van Bulk.
Good afternoon. My name is Sydney Van Bullock, and I'm here today to ask the board to slow down the process of the restructuring of the board governance. I have reviewed the public document for the timeline given multiple times, and the speed at which this is being conducted is highly concerning. While I watched the ad hoc meetings, it became clear that the speed is being valued over quality. I watched with great concern, including today's ad hoc meeting, as board members stated that they will combine public meetings because there isn't enough time to do them all. If the true intent is to gain authentic public feedback, it cannot be done in this manner. So my question is, why the rush? Why is this being pushed out at a rate to ensure that the restructuring happens a mere week before the election, before the public has an opportunity to decide who will sit on this board next year? In a democratic society, this is not how public officials should be conducting business. While I'm grateful to have the opportunity to meet with you next week with the other school board candidates, I believe that it is important that everyone have equitable opportunities to be involved. My request is that we slow down this process to allow for true, authentic engagement with all invested parties. And while I still have a moment, I just want to say that all of these teachers who are here rallying behind the EL curriculum, it's not often you hear teachers asking for curriculum that adds more work to their plate. So please listen to what they have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Erin Carino.
Good afternoon. Another one here to speak in support of the EL curriculum. The EL curriculum has had a significant impact on the growth of my students. We piloted the program last year and I immediately fell in love with it. I have watched my scholars grow their confidence, their problem-solving skills, and their ability to communicate and solve conflicts. I watched them blossom into empathetic, independent, and motivated learners. The EL curriculum has dramatically improved my students' abilities to read, write, and think critically about grade-level content. As a result of using the EL curriculum, I am proud to say that I'm now a facilitator in my classroom rather than the main speaker. I am there to ask questions and to guide students as they become active participants and leaders in their own learning. I would strongly recommend using EL curriculum across all CCSD schools and trusting the process. When implemented well, this curriculum will make an overwhelmingly positive impact on our scholars. Thank you.
Thank you. Madison Clement.
Hi, I'm speaking in favor of the Excellence in Teaching Award. I could never do what you do. You definitely aren't in it for the money, and we do it for the kids. All things that are said to and by teachers with the understanding that we constantly go above and beyond to meet the needs of our kids, but are not often recognized for this work. Especially in an acceleration school, we are teachers, nurses, social workers, therapists, parents, friends, cheerleaders, the list goes on. We spend our time at school long before and after kids are there. We attend professional development. We learn new curriculums. We make sure that every day, each student is going home better than they were when they came to school that morning. As a teacher in an acceleration school, we know that our scholars face challenges, but still show up to school every day to strive to be better. MAP testing is a way for us and our scholars to see the effects of the tireless work that is done in the classroom, but the test does not determine the growth of our scholars. We know that our scholars are growing when they cannot speak English on the first day of school and are explaining math problems to the class on the last day. Every year I tell myself that I'm moving back to Massachusetts, but I stay for the kids. The incentive program will increase the retention of teachers in these acceleration schools. And while we acknowledge that students are more than a test, we are grateful for the opportunity to be recognized for the work that is being done.
Thank you. Next, we have Kara Viola.
Good afternoon. My name is Kara Viola, and I'm a fifth grade teacher at James B. Edwards. And I'm here today to speak about the positives of the EL curriculum. The connections that my students are making to real life situations is improving classroom discussions and instruction by students sharing and talking through situations with their peers. Teachers, I definitely feel, are talking less and students are talking more. One thing that I've definitely noticed teaching this is that my struggling students are actively engaged in grade level material. It helps reach goals of all students reading at grade level. The engagement, the strategies, and protocols help differentiate instruction, but keeps high expectations present. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. That concludes the in-person public comments that we had signed up. The online comments were submitted and had to do with the EL curriculum and the climate surveys that have gone out. All board members received the public comments, and you can review them in your emails.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Item 3A, Mr. Baroy.
Thanks, Reverend Mack. So we're very pleased this afternoon to present to you a recommendation for the District 9 Elementary School. This has been some time coming now. You all agreed to put this on the referendum back in 2020. In 2021, you approved it to be in wave one of three waves in the sales tax referendum. We've been doing a lot of planning subsequent to that. You've had slides that I'll just provide the wave tops on with Jasmine's help. We also have Dr. Swearingen here, who's been the lead on the academic side as we look toward the configuration of this school project. Second slide just shows you the agenda, the different topics that I'm going to cover here. The recap of the community meetings, the new school site, attendance zone, the configuration of the proposed school, scope and update on the project, and the final recommendations. The next slide is the recaps of the public meetings. There we go. Okay, so last fall we held two public meetings, one at Mount Zion, one at Angel Oak, and in the summertime of this year we held one at St. John's High School. The first meeting was to simply explain the entire process, show the information that we had at the time, and get public input on location for the school. At that point, there was a possibility that the recommendation could be rebuilding the site at Mount Zion. We were also looking at an additional piece of property, multiple properties in a different location that will provide adequate space for the school. This past summer, we held a meeting at St. John's High School that talked about that new property in great detail. It was indeed going to be the recommendation that we wanted to bring to the board after listening to the community input on the pros and cons of that site compared to Mount Zion. And in that meeting, the biggest issue was the potential transportation challenges we have on Johns Island already, as well as the distances between the schools. And I believe that with that input, we've got some answers and we're prepared to move forward with recommendations. So that new school site is right off of River Road. It's part of the Schweiger development. It was set aside for non-residential, a non-residential area. The board approved purchase of that property earlier this year, and we've gotten to the point where we're ready to close on the contract for its 55 acres in a very good location with multiple means of ingress and egress to the site, not only off of River Road, but from the neighborhoods to the south, which this would clearly be part of. So as we were looking at, one of the big challenges we were going to have was to determine what students would go to this school. And I've had the opportunity to work with a number of rezoning efforts in the school district in the time that I've been here. They can get very contentious, very difficult, create divides among families, among neighborhoods. And in talking with Dr. Swearingen and the principals of the two schools, the concept of combining the two elementary schools was brought up, and it had a significant number of positive results from going this route. Because of the demographics of the area, we wouldn't be in a position where by splitting the two schools, we'd end up with two schools with different demographics. By combining the two schools, we're in a situation where we don't have to draw lines. We don't have to rezone. If one school gets larger or smaller, we're in really good shape by going this route. And the recommendation would be that Head Start through grade 1 would be at the existing Angel Oak. It's a one-story facility. Most of the classrooms have bathrooms already. The ones that don't, many of which can easily be configured to add bathrooms, because at one point they actually did. So that would be a much more suitable location for the little kids. Again, Head Start through grade 1. We would remove the existing trailers that are there now and be well within the existing capacity of that building to handle those grades. 2 through 5 would be at the new elementary school. And then we would look at repurposing Mount Zion for as a family center and support for the community that attends our schools. That was a big desire of a number of the individuals that came to the public meetings, and a very strong recommendation from the constituent board as well. So we would look to bring forward a recommendation in the future to reconfigure that space. So the next slide talks about how this would lay out with the zones. And I do want to point out here the two different colors. One is the combined school, Angel Oak, Mount Zion. That's the yellow or gold. The green is Frierson. That zone actually goes away. Right now, as you recall, Mount Zion has become a Montessori school. We have fifth graders there that will age out. And at that point, Frierson. Frierson would be the Montessori school for all of Johns Island. And so that zone would actually go away. And any student that wants to go to Montessori would go to Frierson. Any student that lives in the Frierson zone would go to one of the two new schools in the reconfiguration. The dots on this map, each of them represents a family. So that's where our families with children are attending CCSD schools at this point. And the new school is the farthest north on River Road. You can see with the configuration, the breakdown of students as they stood in FY22, we would have 406 students in the primary school and 486 students in the older school. Ms. Barnett and the planning department have extended those projections out into the future. And the numbers that we have so far, day 7, day 10 of those two schools, Angel Oak and Mount Zion, are very accommodating to these new numbers. We didn't receive any significant surprises in our two schools this year. I did include as a separate piece of paper at the request of Mrs. Coates, a map that shows the roads in a little more detail so that you can see the different ways specifically to get to that new school. Next slide. So I wanted to list the benefits and challenges of this proposed grade configuration. You can see on the far left, I already mentioned the bullet in the middle about the inequities of the attendance zones, and that all kids would get a chance to go to the new school. But it does invest ourselves in the new early ed concept, which we've implemented at Mary Ford and Chicora, that we're working toward and developing in other areas of the district. So it would fall very much in line with consolidating early education in one place to ensure that we've got consistency of programs with larger numbers of classes with the younger kids. And the last bullet on the left is the fact that we don't have to go through any zoning changes. It makes things very quick and allows us to proceed ahead with an ultimate decision. One of the challenges, and we picked this up in our community discussions, is that families may have kids in both of the schools, and they had recommended that we look at a staggered bell time between the two elementary schools, so if they were driving their children, could get from one school to the other. And we believe that's very much we are able to accommodate that. We haven't come up with specific bell times yet, but that is something that can easily be done. Along with that, there were some comments about transportation and additional buses that would be required with this concept. The initial review from Mr. Lynch in transportation has indicated that he would only need 2 additional buses. That would vary depending upon if we've got state approval. If it's state approval, it's about $53,000 a year because it is a zoned requirement. The higher costs, if we go with first student straight up, and that's $80,000 a year. But that does not include If you saw that one slide with the map that showed how many dots live near that new school, we believe that there'll be a lot more kids that'll be walking and biking to school than do now. And so we might actually see a savings in the end. All right, with that, I'm going to have Jasmine chime in. She's going to talk about the movement toward the construction project itself.
Good afternoon, Board Chair and Committee of the Whole members. So we have a beautiful two-story brick building that will be able to accommodate 700 students with a 900 core. And what that means is come day 1 of August of 2024, the building itself will be able to handle 700 students. However, big box spaces such as the cafeteria, the media center, the library will already be built day 1 to accommodate 900 students. What we would do is leave a vacant space on the property to accommodate that 200 student increase if it sees a need for the school to do so. Thus far, we have hired an architect firm, Quackenbush Architects, as well as Clancy and Wells team. We have also hired a general contractor, Thompson Turner Construction, and they have also partnered up with a minority firm called Construction Dynamics Group that will be working on the project. The total budget, as you can see, is $41 million. Back in March, the board approved of an inflation increase, increasing from $34 million up to the 41. And at that time, we did several projects due to the inflation and how the market is trending right now. So the project plans to get started in March of 2023 with a completion of August of 2024. The next slide shows the intended configuration. So at the community meeting that we had June 30th, we presented this to the community. So at the top, you'll see River Road as the main entrance. You'll also see a roundabout. So we've been working very closely with the city of Charleston. And this is one of the required items that we need to put in, which is a roundabout that will help improve the traffic flow. So as you travel south within the property, you'll also see a parent loop as well as a bus loop. And the South Carolina Department of Education Office of School Facilities require all schools to have independent parent and bus loop. The school itself will follow the same trend as any other school, where you have your main corridor area that houses all your operational facilities such as the admin area, media center, and library. The 2 jet out areas on the right are the 700 wing educational wings to the building. And the area I mentioned before at the bottom would be the future addition if the school has a need to go up to 900 students. The back area shows a playing field, and off to the right is bus parking as identified. Some of the biggest takeaways from this is that in working with the city of Charleston, there is a need to rotate the building in a different capacity of what it is. And so that's something that we will work through with the design review board as a part of this process. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Jasmine. So the last slide I wanted to point out, we've been waiting for the traffic study. We have the preliminary results in. We're expecting the final report at the end of this summer. When we get the final report, we do not expect the recommendations to change. I've listed there the peak hours on River Road. That doesn't include that's peak exit hour, not the AM hour. So the AM hour, the number of cars would actually be higher than what I've shown here. We're talking about an increase of 214, where I've listed 120, and 141, where I've listed 75. So that's the morning hour commute. If you divide that by the hour, it's 9.3 additional cars a minute in one direction on River Road, and 6.7 cars a minute additional on the opposite direction. So we do not believe this to be an issue. The city has the initial results as well as our entire staff. As I mentioned, the recommendations, Jasmine talked about the roundabout that would be needed on River Road. We would also have to add turn lanes at the intersection of River Road and Brownswood. The map to the left just points out there are 3 different means to get into the site. A lot of individuals thought that you got to enter the school through River Road, but there are 2 neighborhoods that were developed to connect into this site. And so there are 2 roads from the neighborhood to the south, the Swigert Landing area. So there are actually 3 means of getting into the school site and out of the school site. So that's where we stand right now. As soon as we have the final results of this study, we'll post it on our website for everybody to see. The last slide, we've got 3 recommendations for the board today. The first is to confirm that Swigert's Landing will be used as the site for the new D9 elementary school. The second is for the configuration, a single attendance zone, putting Head Start through grade 1 at Angel Oak and grade 2 through 5 at the new school. And that would begin in the fall of 2024 for school year 24-25. And finally, direct us to evaluate the use of Mount Zion as a family engagement center. Subject to your question, that completes our presentation today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Roy. At this time, are there any questions in reference to item 3A? Dr. French.
On the maps that you provided, I don't see any scale. So I don't really understand how far apart the schools are. And for instance, people traveling from living at Betsy Carrison, how far would they have to go to get to the new school?
So Mount Zion to the new school is 8.1 miles, and with no traffic, that's 13 minutes. And from roughly the furthest point of Betsy Carrison, which is where our students live the furthest south, it's 14 miles. So it's 14 miles from the end of Betsy Carrison, roughly to that new school.
Okay, anyone else?
Well, I guess I'd like to add that seems like a pretty long distance. And how far is that, like for Betsy Carrison from the current school?
So the difference between the end of Betsy Carrison and Mount Zion is about 6 miles. So it's 6 miles from the furthest point to Mount Zion and another 8 miles to the new school. And that would be the school for the 2nd through 5th graders. Angel Oak is closer.
Ms. Coates?
So that kind of mirrors my questions. Do we have any other constituent district in Charleston County where the nearest elementary grade level school will be 13 miles from someone's home? Or is this something that is in fact different than the rest of CCSD? Not judging whether that's a good or bad distance, just want to know where it falls in terms of consistency.
Dr. Swearinger just mentioned District 23. We'd have to take a look to see students and where they live from Minnie Hughes, Ellington, if we've got distances down in District 23 that are close to that. I would think that even bigger than the distance is the traffic concern.
Well,
and I would suspect
that's the next reason.
When you look at Mount Pleasant, I suspect that we've got very short distances and a lot more time.
Right.
When we looked at the high schools transporting students from Sullivan's Island to Wando, it's a pretty good distance from a time perspective. So we could certainly take a closer look at that. But I've not done that school by school.
I would like just some thumbnail sketch, because while we can't control the traffic that takes the time for stoplights, we can control the distance between someone's home and their school. So that is sort of within our control. The second question would be related to buses. Do we have a system that will keep all those buses necessary for those kids on Johns Island? I know James Island, we had some issues where those buses are up there on Dorchester, off of Dorchester. This is a lot of work to get these kids to these places, and the added stress of having to go 20 miles north to get buses to come 20 miles back down to start routes. Is there space and a plan for buses to be self-contained in this attendance zone?
Yes, ma'am. And in fact, nearly all, and the only reason I would not say all, because there might actually be a better opportunity because of where the drivers are located to bring a bus onto Johns Island. Because it's also a matter of getting the drivers to the site as well. But I would say nearly all of the buses for Johns Island are on Johns Island now and will remain on Johns
Even
Island.
with the projected increases.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the last thing is, I think it would be interesting to see how Hot Gap is going to play into this in terms of the fact that there are constituent magnets serving 2 constituent districts, and will that space continue? I mean, surely the theory is that kids in this district go 0 to high school in the same area. And I don't know how that's going to play in with Hot Gap. I'd like to see that y'all have given that some consideration. And one last question, if I may. Head Start, what is the age of children served CD to 1 in Angel Oak under this plan? What's the youngest children? I know we talk CD, we talk Head Start, we talk early Head Start. How old?
So if I'm not mistaken, and I'll defer to my friends on Learning Services, Mount Zion right now has one early Head Start class, correct?
I'm talking under the
They
new,
got the 3-year-old.
so the new configuration will have that school serving 3-year-olds through first grade. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion. Can I make a motion?
I think Dr. French has a question.
Well, I guess I wanted to hear from Reverend Mack and Dr. Frazier about this configuration. It seems like a really large school for an elementary school, and it seems I'm just concerned about the distances. So I'd like to hear from Mel because you are more intimately involved with the area.
So there have been a number of meetings as far as the concept of this new school and the proposal dealing with parents and the communities. So we've looked at different options of trying to come up with the best location and dealing with different landowners and available property that was there. So there was some consideration at some point even trying to build the school on the existing property there, but that did not work out. But however, this new concept of the grade level changes that was expressed in great details at the sessions, and there wasn't a pushback on that concept of grade level configuration, because the theory behind that was that the kids, wherever they reside on the island, will get an opportunity to attend those schools. The major thing that came up, I believe, was the traffic component of it. And that has been done with extensive work as to how do we make sure that traffic is not an issue with the location of the new school. And that study has been done. The roundabouts have been put in place to try to offset that. And also there have been efforts and conversation working also with the task force out there on the island as well with this concept and looking at the building of this new school. So and I've attended all of the meetings there and felt really good that the community feels good about this new school and the concept moving forward. So I have no concerns there, unless Dr. Frazier has something else to add.
I attended a community meeting on last Thursday, and members of the community are very, very happy about getting this new school. They're more concerned about student achievement than distances. They're more concerned about the traffic that's now dealing with the mass of people that are now moving onto the island. So I just want to thank you all that you have done a very good job of engaging this community. They're ready for this school. I think this board is going to be proud of the work that you have done. And let's move forward. Let's start focusing on student achievement. Parents are willing to work with the distances. They just don't mind. And I just want to thank this board for being supportive of our effort to support the work that you all have done.
Just really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion to utilize Swaggart's Landing as the site of the new D9 elementary school, implement a single attendance zone for D9 with a head start through grade 1 at Angel Oak and grades 2 through 5 at the new school, starting in school year 2024-2025, and evaluate the use of Mount Zion as a family engagement center.
Second.
Just one question about, and I know it says evaluate the use, but however, given the change in the scope of the schools and the grade configuration, I'd like the board to at least entertain the fact of not just evaluate, but to convert Mount Zion into a family engagement center.
I'll take that friendly amendment.
So I would question, because I think it's a great idea, except I don't know what the idea is. I'm sure there are some plans around it. I think the board deserves to see that kind of concept and what it would look like before we're asked to pre-vote on an approval of something.
Well,
Is that in existence?
So once the new school is built, Mount Zion will be a vacant facility or building per se. So the conversion of that into a family engagement center does not become to be a delayed process, but it becomes to be a process to where our staff can start building and working toward how do we use that facility in the engagement process, and also in preparation and getting our younger kids who are not in school, right, getting them prepared and ready to go. That could already be in the plan, in the process, and not be delayed an additional 3 to 5 years because we're still now trying to figure out what are we going to do with the building.
So we're in your amendment that Ms. Herter just accepted, it's just going ahead and designating that will happen,
Right.
but not approving the exact plan.
Right.
So then does that mean that the plan comes back to the board for approval before implementation? You see, I'm not asking about the timeline or the creating of the plans. I think that's great. I think it's something that doesn't exist anywhere in CCSD. So it will probably be the guiding star of how they are duplicated. And how do we know what that looks like? Or how do we have any knowledge of that before it opens its front doors? You see what I'm saying? Does the word convert give them permission to go ahead and create and implement?
Do we not have existing family engagement center already?
Yes.
Where?
Mary Ford.
I thought, but Mary Ford handles that CD to 1. Mary Ford's a family engagement center that educates the kids. So this is kind of interesting and could be a better option, but it's a little bit different.
You want to say something? Okay, so no, again, this does not delay the process. Okay, we have something that we can replicate from Mary Ford. We also have planned with the new Latson Elementary School that's going to be built. It's going to include a family engagement center there as well as that process begin to move forward. All I'm saying is that as we're engaging in this, that we also consider Mount Zion to be used, a facility that's already there that does not have to be reconstructed as is with the Latson facility that's going to have to be constructed, correct?
The Latson facility would be utilizing for the interim, the existing
Right.
building. So similar to this
Similar
concept.
to the same concept.
Latson will have a new school building. The old school will be in some part, the early education family.
So
family
this is
engagement
simply
center.
saying the services at Mary Ford are going to be split in 2 on Johns Island. CD1 in the school and the family engagement center down the road in the other school.
Can we just put plan to use Mount Zion for Family Engagement Center? So we take convert out of it, and does that give you
Yeah.
enough?
No, all I'm wanting to make sure is that the board has, and it won't be us, clearly, it's 2024 coming on, that the board has some idea of what it looks like before it opens its doors, and that we're not pointing back to a 2022 vote that says, well, you said so.
Right.
You know, I'm just asking for that kind of knowledge ahead of time for the board coming forward. I don't care what the word is, that's the intent.
Got it.
Does that match that this won't open without the board having a public authoritative discussion about the concept sometime prior to 2024?
So I would think, and I'll turn to my academic colleagues if I'm a little off base, or Mr. Kennedy, but I would think that we would engage with the community to determine what they need. What might not be exactly the same as Mary Ford. We would want to find things that they need to support the kids in school. So we first have to identify what's going to be in the box. The second thing is, because the resources for Mount Zion would go to the new school, we would have to come back with a budget to operate that. So the board would still approve the budget when the time comes for that facility to be prepared to be used. So there'll be multiple opportunities down the road to come back to the board.
Perfect. That was what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yep.
We need a second.
I'll second.
I was the second.
Okay, that's fine.
The word is convert.
Please have a read the motion. We just get bogged down in.
You just want me to reread it?
Yeah,
Dwayne?
that's great.
Utilize Swiggert's Landing as a site of the new D9 elementary school. Implement a single attendance zone for D9 with Head Start through grade 1 and grades 2 through 5 at new schools starting in school year 2024-2025, and convert the use of Mount Zion to a family engagement center.
She voted. She's voted.
Is Ms. Buckley on?
She's on.
She's on? Okay.
A moment to look at your vote.
That motion passes. Next up is item 3B, Ms. Coker.
Good afternoon, board members and CCSD leadership. We're very excited to be here today as the mental health and wellness team to showcase the work that we've been doing around Pillar 3 of ESSER with wraparound services and mental health and wellness supports. I am unfortunately under the weather, so I'm going to pass the slides that I was going to do to Miss Megan Bocino. So she will be presenting the slides that I was going to do. And with her today will be Franz Steele, who's our Director of School Counseling, and Marcus Johnson, who is the new Mental Health and Wellness Systems Coordinator. And then I'll come back at the end just to talk through the budget. So thank you for having us today, and I defer to those in the room.
All right, well, good afternoon, Board Chair Dr. Reverend Mack, Superintendent Kennedy, Vice Chair Waters, board members, and CCSD leadership. The CCSD Mental Health and Wellness team is excited to share the work we are leading to support Pillar 3 of the ESSER priorities, those wraparound services, and specifically highlighting the mental health and wellness supports. So we are, that next slide, excited to have a cross-collaborative team that's actually across departments and learning services. So either here today in the room or not here with us, but Lisa Allison from Intervention and Psych Services, the Department of Exceptional Children, Sherry Bell, or designee represents on the team, Franz Stille and Ela Hudson with School Counseling, Holly Cutt from our Curriculum and Instruction team, and then some representatives from our Department of Alternative Programs and Services, myself, Jennifer Coker, in addition to Tasha Joyner, Marcus Johnson, and Jana Cunningham. So again, Franz Stille and Marcus Johnson are with us here today, and we're really excited. Our newest member, Marcus Johnson, is the new Mental Health and Wellness Systems Coordinator, which was a position that was actually able to be funded through the ESSER grants. And so he started in the spring and was previously served as the school social worker at Liberty Hill Academy. He is one of his other roles is supervising our district social work team as a licensed social worker himself. So you can see those team goals on the slide there. In the spring, we were meeting weekly. We have now moved to these bi-weekly meetings because we're in some review of those implementation projects and various updates on our partnerships and programs across Charleston County. We also are able to collaborate and communicate across those various departments to ensure the alignment of the supports and services for various initiatives and our direct student and adult supports. And then we've been working to review any school-based supports and fill in those gaps as needed. And on this next slide, you can kind of see where we use our tiered supports continuum, but really that supporting that mental health and wellness we know must be supported through this tiered approach and layered in order to impact all students. So we're given a brief update on our progress to date across all 3 tiers. Tier 1, kind of represented in the green there, is what we do for all students. Some of the highlights, I won't speak to all of them, but you can see on the slide, but do include student and staff calming rooms, the restorative practice work, the social emotional learning curriculum, CD through 8th grade. We have second step, and the new this year is a pilot for our high schools using Rethink Ed and the MUSC Boeing and Wellness Initiative, in addition to some other pieces for all students. And then typically, that's going to respond, 80 to 85% of our students are going to respond to those tier 1 needs. And then we call that layering if we need to move to that tier 2, where we provide those interventions and prevention strategies that are put in place to support some students. Usually focus, we call that small groups or focus on like students with common needs. We look around 10 to 15% of our student population that receive this additional support through that tier 2. And then that tier 3 is our most intensive and individualized interventions offered, and is generally only needed for about 3 to 5% of our students, which in Charleston County is approximately 2,500 students. So again, we call that layered, because if you're needing those individualized, more intensive supports, you're still going to have access to that tier 1 all. I'll pass it over to Franz.
Good afternoon. So listed here are the staff that specifically support our students' mental health and wellness. We also outlined the additional staff that have been added since last year to further support the needs of our students and our families. We have maintained or increased positions in each of these areas. And two areas to highlight are the increase of social workers from 15 to 27, and then also the creation of our mental health and wellness coaches. We have 7 that we've recommended so far for those positions, and then we're have another round of interviews next week. Coaches will be assigned out to schools based on need, and some of their roles include supporting calming rooms, facilitating small groups, and supporting restorative practices. The next slide outlines or represents data over time from 2016 until 2017 until this last year. The data is based on some tier 2, but primarily tier 3 intervention services with students since 2016. During the 2002 school year, CCSD mental health awareness and wellness tier 2 and tier 3 initiatives supported 2,861 students. And this number aligns with the recommendation of the tiered systems of support that Ms. Bocchino just referenced earlier. And this shows more than a 300% increase from 2016-17. And then on the next slide, these are a breakdown of the additional tier 2 and tier 3 supports noted in the previous slides. This shows an increase over time with our services with the Department of Mental Health, MUSC TOPS program, the CCSD clinical counselors, and then support through the Project Prevent grants. Supports through communities and schools has remained fairly steady over time. And then you can see a significant increase with the initiatives that we started last year with our contracted counselors who served 515 students, and then our art therapy, which is in place in 5 of our schools. And obviously those services will continue for this school year, and we will continue to track that data to see which students are impacted. And then I will turn it over to Mr. Johnson.
Good afternoon. Here we're highlighting some additional supports. Currently, we have student calming rooms and calming kits, and they're acting as a tier 1 support for all of our students. We have 36 schools with calming kits in every classroom, and 21 schools have student calming rooms, and we are continuing to order calming kits and additional supports in continuing to build the beauty and calmness of our calming rooms. Some of our tier 2 supports include communities and schools. These counselors are in 14 of our schools and can work with groups or individuals, as well as our art therapy, which continues to work in 15 schools last year and serving over 300 students. Our tier 3 supports are individualized and supported plans through various partnerships. Of course, our longstanding partnership with the Department of Mental Health, which serves over 1,200 students across our schools each year. We've also added contracted counselors using the ESSER funding, and we've entered into a partnership with the Boeing grant. Additional pending contracts would be our Rhythm platforms, where students are able to do a daily virtual check-in. Schools can track the responses and provide short videos that provide strategies based on responses. The 4 schools that will be piloting this program is Creative Arts, Frierson, Liberty Hill, and Pepper Hill. Also, we're working on a contract with Mindspace. Next slide, please. Thank you. While we have the approval to hire additional mental health professionals, it has totally presented a challenge, as there is somewhat of a shortage in our state. But because all of our school staff members are providing some form of mental health support to our students, we decided to create pathways to continue to increase our capacity to provide continued social and emotional support for our students and families. This project will include a menu of certification options and tuition assistance, again, aimed at building our capacity to provide supports at level tier 1 and tier 2. Pathways include school social work certification, certified addiction specialist, independent clinical licensure for social work, licensed professional counselors, music therapy certification, trauma-informed educator certification, and applied behavior analysis. Next slide, please. In addition, as I mentioned before, we're working on getting trauma-informed educator training. We're growing our employee assistance program, a resiliency training, increasing adult calming rooms, adult SEL professional learning, and the Panorama data protocol, elevating staff voice, and school-based mental health initiatives. Thank you.
And I will pick back up on the last slide. Stephen, if you could go to the last slide with the budget. So we broke down the 3 phases of ESSER here, and there were no ESSER 1 funds allocated to wraparound services and mental health and wellness. In ESSER 2, the budget was a little over 1.2 million. On the chart that you have a board members, you should have a detailed chart, and the chart in the presentation is just a high level overview of the information. We have a remaining balance in ESSER 2 of $865,407 as of August 31st. Over 160,000 of that is attached to salaries of school psychologists and social workers. 97,000 is attached to contracted service counselors that we mentioned that are seeing students across the district. Just a little less than $6,000 in stipends from summer work, which are still being processed. So that will probably be gone soon. And then there's $600,000 that's allocated for our acceleration schools for some restorative curriculum and practice work out of ESSER 2. And then out of ESSER 3, which is our largest piece of funding, of the money remaining of the 13 million the 12.9 million remaining, about 9 million of that is in salaries for school psychs, social workers, mental health and wellness coaches. And then we have additional funding left for contracted services, a little over 1 million, and that includes training and support coaching for schools and counselors, as well as our community partnerships, which includes the Boeing grant and some other community contracts, community-based organization contracts we have. And then, as Marcus mentioned, it also has about $1 million for that certification pathway program. And then finally, we have $1.6 million for restorative practices, calming kits, and calming rooms, which are all in the process. We have many contracts in place that just have not become expenditures at this time. So that's an update on the work and the budget, and we are open to any questions that you may have at this time.
This is really great to hear. Thank you so much, Ms. Waters.
Yeah, I don't have a question. Just this is so phenomenal. I'm so happy that y'all have been able to put all this in place. And in the midst of a shortage, that every area that we needed to hire for increase is just phenomenal.
Dr. Frazier.
Yes, thank you for the work that you all are doing. Over the years, I've seen some changes in the district, but what is so important is that we have gone from 2 social workers. I just can't believe that you all were able to do that. But could you explain to us, what is a calming kit and what does a calming room look like? I've been hearing that word thrown around, and I'm an old social worker, retired from the profession. So thank you for coming aboard and helping us with this district, and because these problems are not going to go away right away. And then I want to talk a little bit about sustainability. After ESSER, then what?
Good question. So the common kit really is when you think about our classroom educators and teachers trying to just put those tools and resources all in one place, so that they're really into an easily used box, and they're kind of put into their classrooms for students to be able to kind of practice some of those self-regulation skills. So our younger students might be using those in a reading corner or an area just to kind of use a timer to time themselves or a stress ball, the different pieces that you might see, but it's all put together, well boxed. And then there's also some training and components that go along that, so that our students, again, get that opportunity to kind of take that reset time or that break within their classroom, so that they're not being removed, so that we're moving away from kind of those exclusionary, so that they're able to continue to engage in academics. And then the calming and wellness rooms are very similar, but each team, school team that is interested or has the space has been able to design those themselves, and they got to determine, do they want to use them? Do they want to focus on students or staff? And again, we had some different PTAs around the district. They were able to fund some of those wellness rooms in the past. I think there was a story about the Moultrie Middle School, but this kind of was provide that equity so that any school was able to do this. So similar, the calming kits and tools and resources are in there. And West Ashley High just did a TikTok video and put it out about their new staff wellness room and student space. And again, it's students self-select. They go for a brief amount of time, kind of just engage, take a break if they're overwhelmed from academics, from any of those multitude of things that could be occurring in their lives. And then there is a safe, trusted adult. And if they needed to ask for a referral to see a school counselor, social worker, or someone additional, they're able to do that as well.
And after ESSER?
So after ESSER, we do have some plans. One of those is really just building that capacity. So we're hoping that our school teams all additionally see the benefit of our school social workers, school psychologists, and others. So we'll pull from a various funding sources, our other at-risk funds or GOF, and see what those allocations look like. And then the great thing about those calming rooms and wellness and kits is that once in actually a lot of our second step curriculum, once those things are purchased, which has been that they will be sustainable and remain in the schools over time. So we're really looking through how do we certify more of our staff members, like for example, that music therapy is a Boeing grant project, but we have allocated to continue that here in the spring based on great feedback from the schools participating, and it would allow some of our current music educators to get that certification, so they would be able to have that dual role.
And I'll add to that if it's okay, Dr. Frazier, it's a great question. Restorative practices has previously been funded in Title II. We did move it into ESSER, so there's always the opportunity for us to go back into Title II with the restorative practice work. But again, the bulk of the training will be done, and so that's the largest cost of that. And then for the, Megan mentioned, the certifications are very important. And so we're trying to spend as much on materials as possible. And then we'll be evaluating the contracted counselors that we've been doing. It's actually been a joy to see the people from the community not volunteering, but coming to work for anywhere from 4 to 40 hours a week as temporary employees. And that's definitely a sustainable piece of the work that we could do in the future that may turn out to be more cost effective than some of the other things that we've done.
Thank you all so very much. This is awesome. Thank you.
Ms. Coates? Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong chair. So what is the job description of a project prevent support coach?
So do you have it, Megan?
That for you, Ms. Coker was going to answer to that, but that's actually part of the Project Prevent federal grant. That was the 5-year plan. And so there are 2. They support the 7 schools. 4 of those are elementary, and 3 those are our secondary schools. They feed into North Charleston High School. And so a lot of the work is aligned. They're supporting that tiered framework, but they are doing some direct student work at tier 2 with small groups and tier 3 services as well. And then a lot of that is also the data collection that we know comes along with the grant.
So they're okay. Thank you.
They also, Ms. Coates, I'm sorry, they also work directly with the parent advocates in those schools to provide parent classes and trainings, and they've worked on parenting rooms in some of those schools, but the majority of their work really is student group focused. So they do with the schools teams work with small groups of students, some schools, multiple groups over the year.
Thank you. And my second question really is just a great praise on this pathways to certification concept.
is this available to staff, to students? Who is allowed to benefit from this tuition or access this tuition assistance and certification process?
Could have probably been a little more specific, but it is exclusively for our staff to sort of build our capacity so that we do have some sustainability with some of these specialized mental health services. So it is specifically for CCSD employees.
Okay, so then they would take on that additional role in addition to what they're currently doing, or the plan is if these folks become certified, they shift over?
So a lot of these certifications, like for example, the music therapy is something that can be incorporated through all of their instruction throughout the day.
Right.
So it wouldn't necessarily be an additional duty. It would enhance the work that they're already doing.
Sure. So I just see a great synergy here for when you have a need and you have a school district with a great set of career technology centers. I don't know that we shouldn't explore how this clearly is a career path, and we have career path facilities. If we don't have some synergy there to grow your own, great leaders grow their own. And offline, I would ask you if you could, there are some other entities you could get folks from to do some of these specific things. Charleston Dorchester Mental Health could give you a stash of people that are ready for some sort of formal certification, as could the Charleston Center. So I think there are other places you could go and not have such a hard time finding applicants, because statewide, I can find tons of folks that want to do some of this work and are looking for certification opportunities. It's just a case of putting these people together.
Thank you.
And that's a good idea, Ms. Coates. We actually do in the Project Prevent grant allow mental health, Charleston Dorchester Mental Health, to do some of the professional development. So we certainly could consider that with these funds as well. We have that existing structure within that grant. So we
A
can
lot of
certainly
people
consider
served by those entities that could then turn around and become professionals in that industry. And that's where I think you should, I think would be a great place to look. Is there a lot of people served with the programs that you're trying to do that then successfully complete those programs and can become professionals in that area? And so we're sitting here saying there's a shortage, and I would say there's a whole lot of people out there that you could potentially utilize.
Mr. Kennedy? Did you have something?
I did. Thank you very much. So, thank you to Ms. Coker and the team for such an excellent presentation. I also want to recognize Ms. Coker now. She is going to be retiring at the end of this month. We'll have a formal recognition at the 26th board meeting, but just want to recognize the work that she has done. Back in, I think late spring, maybe early spring, I was in Columbia at the superintendent's roundtable, which is superintendents from all over the state, and Ms. Spearman. And a big topic was mental health problems across the state in K-12. And so there's a task force statewide working on that. But based on what Ms. Coker and her team have done here in Charleston in CCSD, I would say that they have positioned our district ahead of the rest of the state in addressing this tremendous problem. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you so much. Are you presenting on the next item 3C?
So I'm going to do the transition, I believe, from here. And so there was, yes, ma'am. There was a, sorry, every time somebody mentions retirement, I cry. Joy and sadness. So we are, Dr. Shavonna Coakley is there to present on the progressive discipline plan, specifically the drug and alcohol portion. And we also brought code of conduct booklets for everyone. Ms. Bocino actually led the code of conduct development this year, which is a combination of resources. And so we wanted to make sure you had a copy of those. And if there are questions around the code of conduct, Ms. Bocino again is there, but Dr. Coakley will be presenting on the ADAPT PDP. And we thank her and her team for all the work on this summer as well.
Thank you, Ms. Coakley.
Thank you, Ms. Coker. Good afternoon, Superintendent Kennedy, Board Chair, and our Board of Trustees. On today, I have the pleasure of providing you with updates from my previous presentation a few weeks ago and making sure that you all have a clear understanding of the ADAPT PDP, which is our alcohol and other drugs program for teens. You'll see on that first slide that we have entitled it Prevention and Intervention Services Captured and Accelerated, because the next slide is going to show you some data that could be a little bit concerning. And it was the data that we used to actually talk about what services were needed to assist our scholars across Charleston County School District. So the next slide, as stated, gives you a breakdown of what our alcohol and other drugs infractions would be that's outlined by the state. In 2019, 2020, you'll remember that is the year that we actually went out in March on COVID. And so I provided you with the data for those infractions at that time. In 2020, 2021, we came back in a hybrid season for Charleston County School District, where some students were in school and others remained at home on virtual learning. But what you will see in that data from the previous year to 2020, 2021, is that our numbers began to double in some places, and in all places, it mostly increased with the number of students who actually came into contact with some type of illegal substance. But more concerning would be the data for 2021, 2022. When we compare the 2019-20 data to 2021-22, you will see that the numbers tripled in most of those cases. The good news is that our recidivism rate, the rate of students who actually violated that infraction more than once, still stayed 90% and higher. So this goes back to that first slide that talks about prevention, capturing it and accelerating it. And when we look at what do we do for students who need remediation academically, if you go to the next slide, we talk about remediating the core. We also have to discuss that we have students who are socially and emotionally dependent on substance use. They're emotionally dependent on it, socially dependent on it because they want to belong. They want to feel better about themselves, in addition to fulfilling a need to cope with society and their peers. And most of our disciplinary hearing, when we hear about students or when we talk with the students about what is going on that leads them to the use of alcohol or tobacco or drugs, a lot of it does deal with the peer pressure. A lot of it deals with being able to actually focus in school throughout the day. They talk about the use of it in society and believing that it is okay when we simply know it is not okay. So in the same way that we reteach the core curriculum, the thought was for us to reteach our alcohol and other drug program, again, by capturing that data and accelerating the prevention and intervention supports that we provide. So we do that by, yes, still applying consequences, but really doing some wraparound services with our scholars and families. So we began on a journey of collecting feedback and making revisions to our alcohol and other drug infractions. The first thing we did was to remove all alcohol and drug infractions from the typical CCSD PDP, and we placed it in its own PDP. Again, so we can look at the wraparound services that's needed in addition to consequences that we would apply to students. Feedback on the proposed draft was guided by administrators. We can go to the next slide. Was guided by administrators who were mostly impacted by the use of the possession of drugs, as well as a few other schools who were not as impacted. So we collected a group of ideas and suggestions from a large amount of schools across our district. We also proposed the changes to the PDP planning team. And just from feedback there, I want to go ahead and openly state that I am committed to ensuring that this work is better vetted through our PDP planning team by reestablishing a PDP steering committee. I do believe that because this was done at the end of the school year, we still needed to have some more voices in the planning of the ADAPT PDP. And so with that, I met with the CTA group to talk about what are some suggested changes, proposals to the revision, and then we actually implemented a few of those suggested changes to better support our schools, meaning our teachers, our administrators, and our scholars. And this was done after the release of the ADAPT PDP. So within the last few weeks, meeting with CTA and making sure that we got feedback from them. Some facts about the PDP, the ADAPT PDP. We can go to the next, yes. Infractions related to alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs were removed, again, as I said, from the standard CCSD PDP to create the ADAPT PDP. So there was not a recreation or an additional PDP as far as what hasn't been outlined by the state. We actually, again, removed those alcohol and other illicit drugs from the regular PDP to create the ADAPT PDP. With the creation of the ADAPT PDP, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs infraction that would normally result in a DAP hearing or a constituent board hearing have not changed. So those hearings will still occur. What has changed and what we identify as a DAP hearing. So the DAP level hearings for infractions are now called ADAPT hearings. And the hearing panel consists of experts who are able to acknowledge the behavior as a need for treatment, prevention services, or increased intervention services for the student and or family, as well as the assignment of further consequences as deemed necessary. The ADAPT hearing panel includes communities and schools, mental health, Wake Up Carolina. In addition, it also includes a self-assessment. So when a student is found in violation of an ADAPT infraction, no longer do we have to wait 2 to 3 months to determine what that student's level of usage is. If the student is coherent the day that the infraction took place, they are self-administered a craft screener that allows us to really identify what are the needs and support. The other positive thing about the craft screener is that students who normally come before a hearing would be given that craft screener. Now we can implement the craft screener for anyone who isn't even involved in the hearing process as of yet. Again, going back to the prevention and intervention in hopes that we don't have a student come before us for a hearing. There was one state level change, which was drug paraphernalia that was added to the ADAPT PDP. The state added drug paraphernalia because students across the state were being coded as drug possession when they actually only had a paraphernalia. So the paraphernalia is a device or an object in the absence of a drug or a tobacco product. So you will see that new coding. There's also clarification to the term drug usage. Drug usage does not mean that students are using drugs on campus. It means that a student has actually come to school either high or have used it off campus and then came onto a school campus. We are working hard this year to make sure that our administrators understand that if students arrive on campus and they are caught actually using drugs, that is to be coded as drug possession. Again, drug usage would be any student who actually comes to school and they're inebriated, high, or have concerns about using drugs before they arrived to school. And I want to also highlight, when we talk about capturing, accelerating the prevention and intervention services, we're connecting our work. We're connecting our work to individuals across the city and the state. So with me today, I do have Ms. Talisha Drayton, if she will stand. She is our senior prevention and intervention coordinator in the department. She is responsible for serving on 4 outside community agency task forces that have been designed throughout the state for alternative to detention, where we are looking for how do we provide, again, before we place our students onto the street for expulsion or alternative program, what other services can be provided. She's also responsible for mediating a lot of the concerns that we have at the school level for those prevention and intervention services and monitoring students who have actually been placed on probation through the hearing process using our prevention and intervention supports. My other staff member that I have with me is Ms. Linda Allen Ballinger. Ms., if you'll stand, Ms. Ballinger is actually our ADAPT coordinator. So she is responsible for working with the Charleston Center, MUSC, Wake Up Carolina, the craft screener with Ms. Plum and her team, communities and schools with our ADAPT hearing panel, as well as looking for those outside resources because there are some students who just need rehabilitative services. Ms. Ballinger serves as that point of contact for us and making sure those services are provided to our families. outside of a disciplinary process. So again, I hope that you guys have a clear understanding of the ADAPT process. The things that we are committed to moving forward is just continuing to monitor that data and making adjustments as we go forth. This is the first year of full implementation, and we are excited. We are excited about the work that's before us because for a long time, we've talked about always being that parent that spanked the student after the infraction has been committed. But this year, we're actually putting in prevention services before our students get to that point. And that's what's important. We are committed to staying true to the PDP steering committee, really reaching out to CTA. I have had great conversations with Jody Stallings and Michelle Nichols about our partnership and quarterly meetings. And those conversations have been positive and really led to some really great problem solving along the way. And we're really committed to working with our families and community at large, but most importantly, really building the connections and looking for resources outside of CCSD. Because when we talk about alcohol and drugs, that's separate from education, and we will need the support of our outside resources. Questions?
Thank you so much, Ms. Coakley. We really appreciate it. Any questions? Dr. French.
I do just have one. I'm a little confused that you said that there will still be CB constituent board hearings, but then you talked about the ADAPT hearings and the ADAPT hearing panels. There are no constituent board members.
The ADAPT hearing panels will be our DAP hearing process. So we have two types of hearings in Charleston County, the DAP hearing level and the constituent board level. The constituent board level hearings will not change because, as you know, our board chairs all identify which infractions would come before a constituent board level and what would be a DAP hearing. So tobacco distribution and drug distribution, they would not go before a DAP hearing panel. It would go before the constituent board because that's what's already been designed. The great news is the same opportunities that would be available at a DAP hearing, we are going to extend those same opportunities at the constituent board level.
Will the constituent boards get advice from experts about how to handle these kinds of infractions?
Absolutely. So there will be a constituent board training as we do every year. But when we come up with our constituent board actual hearing for students who are being referred, they're receiving the options for students this year ahead of time versus waiting until we get to the hearing process. So all of those disposition options are being given to our board members ahead of time, as well as consultation.
Dr. Frazier?
Yes, I just want to take a moment to Talisha and Linda, please stand up again. You know, these young ladies have been in the trenches for years, working to prevent our children from being placed on the streets.
Yes.
And I just want to thank you guys for hanging in there because they were at Daniel Jenkins Academy. And now you're still in the trenches working to make sure that our students are in school, off the streets, and I don't have to worry when I'm away from home. Thank you so very much. And let's just give them a hand. I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frazier. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was information, right? Yeah. Okay. Next up, 3D, Ms. Roberts, Ms. Huggins, and Ms. Simmons.
And no.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Kennedy. Y'all got me all confused on the listings today. Sorry.
So while the PowerPoint's coming up, so last Tuesday, the state released the spring test results, the SC Ready scores for reading and math, as well as the SC Pass for science. Typically, when those scores come out, you're right, the Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Simmons and Buffy Roberts, Ms. Roberts, the Assessment and Accountability Department head, would present the data. They happen to be out of town, so I will give a high-level overview of what the data indicate, and then we, at some future date, we can go into more of some more of the details. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, so the first slide here looks at the English language arts or our reading program, SC Ready. In the top line there in the box with numbers, we had a goal of 50.6% of our students reading on grade level. 53.2% met, so we exceeded the goal for the district average. I will say on these goals were set under the existing strategic plan that was created several years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. So as the board goes out and create new set of goals, we will have new measures in this coming fall. And down at the bottom of that block, you can see the makeup of the racial results. So Black African Americans, they met the goal, 23.1% reading on grade level, and the other racial groups there, Hispanic and the multilingual learners did not, as well as our special education students. This slide here then just is a graphic representation of the district average. As you can see from 2018 until 2022, we increased 4.6 points, which is 5.9 points above the state average. This slide takes the average and breaks it down by the racial groups you see here. White, 77.1% met the targets. And I'm comparing those now between the 2022 on the right-hand side of the slide graph here to the second number in, which is 2019 timeframe before the pandemic. So you can see before the pandemic for white kids, they were at 75.1 and now they're 77.1%. Now for the other category, 63% met their targets versus 65.8 before the pandemic. And at the bottom of this graph, the two graph lines there show that for Hispanic kids, they're at 29.6, which is slightly above the 2019 numbers. And with African Americans, 23.1% met the targets, which is 20.9 compared to 20.9. And I will say that these numbers are being presented in the percentage of kids who met targets. And you all have heard me talk about the percentage of kids, especially African Americans, who have not met their targets. So for the 2021, which would have been not this past school year, but school year before last, the percentage of African American kids that were reading below grade level was 82%. And so now that number has improved for African Americans by the numbers that you see here. Key opportunities for the future. This slide simply shows for the different groups here, target groups here, Blacks, Hispanics, et cetera, where we are in relationship to the state. So for these groups, we are still below the state level. So that means we have a significant amount of work to do. At the bottom here, it shows that the acceleration schools had a 7.5 point gain overall. However, we're still at only 21.3% that met they're considered ready. And so therefore, we still have work to do because the 21.3 is compared to the district average of 53.2. And going to mathematics, the mathematics scores pretty much mirror the scores from reading. And you can see district-wide, we had 48.9% of our students met their targets, and the goal was 48.5. And then there's similar type of outcomes for when we break the numbers out by those different groups at the bottom. A similar graph that showed for the reading, 48.9% on average of our kids across the district met their mathematic, not the targets, but they actually on grade level. Versus 47.4% before the pandemic. Mathematics for the racial groups. If it not shown on this graph, when I mentioned a few minutes ago at the beginning, now we come back with some significant more detail. I want to point something out here. I don't have the graph in front of me, but I looked at some data earlier today. So although we are at 17, looking at the African Americans, with 17 points. So you see that we actually dropped from the 2019. And then if you take a look at the data that I looked at earlier today, which I'll bring before you at some point. I think I have the numbers here. One second. Yes. So in, I think it was 2005 and 2006, the number of African Americans who were on grade level for mathematics was 16.8%, which is 17%. We climbed to 26.6%, which was 27% in around 2011, 2012 timeframe. And so now we have dropped back down to where we were in 2005, 2006 timeframe. So although we had growth from 2021 to 2022, we have the data we look at over time indicates that we have a significant amount of work left to do. Next slide, please. This key opportunities for mathematics is very similar to the key opportunities for reading. Most of our groups are below state. The state average, we're above state average on average, but when we disaggregate the data, you can see that we're below. And then at the bottom, acceleration schools, 7.4 percentage point increase over the 2021 numbers, which was significant, but we still have a ways to go with that group of schools. So the next steps with ELA and math, there are a number of things on this slide, and I'll let the academic folks get into this later. But you heard the teachers and coaches talk about the EL program earlier today, and one of the points was made about, and this is one of the things that Carolyn Belcher pushed extremely hard, that we need to have on grade level instruction in our core courses. And so we will continue to do that. The second bullet here, onboarding and ongoing professional development. So the EL curriculum has proven to be effective, and it's been effective with only a partial rollout in the last school year. And so this coming school year, well, the school year that we're in, we're going to complete that rollout, and that includes all of the modules and using the skills block. So a partial rollout last year in our schools, and we had positive outcomes, and there's excitement in the schools about what it might look like when we're able to roll out the complete EL package. The next two blocks here. So letters training, it's like the science. How do adults teach kids how to read? And we have a significant problem in the district, and that, and this is statewide, whereas our schools of education, colleges and universities do not teach our students that are learning how to teach, do not teach them how to teach kids how to read. And it's a big problem. When we spoke with the state of Mississippi, the Secretary of Education there, one of the success factors that, one of the factors that led to the success of increasing reading across the state of Mississippi was teaching their teachers across the state how to teach kids how to read using this letters training. And so we have an initiative that we're exploring to actually expand the letters training for all pre-K through third grade teachers, and looking at using some of the ESSER dollars to compensate teachers to be able to partake in that training. The other thing that principals are telling me on the next bullet, expansion of early childhood classroom, that we have kids coming into kindergarten. They are not prepared to take on the rigor of the instruction, and that if we are actually going to make some significant progress, we need to tackle this earlier than when kids are coming in, before they get to kindergarten and early childhood. And so one of the problems in certain parts of the county is that we don't have enough space, don't have enough classrooms. And so again, there's a task force that's been created to tackle that, and say, yes, today we don't have enough classrooms, but how can we have enough classrooms maybe next month, as opposed to 5 years from now. The other things here, a consistent model planning for, but so PLC, professional learning communities right now across the district, you go into schools, there's a lot of schools have their own design on professional learning communities, but there's a process, there's processes in place that's professional, that's been designed as we're looking at trying to have some standardization around that. Unit assessment, so this is simply doing our assessments during the school year to make sure that teachers and administrators know where kids are. The walkthrough tool that's being designed, we have a team working on that so that when administrators from the central office and school base go into our classrooms, trying to determine the effectiveness of our teachers as they work with our kids, we'll have some consistency on what that we're using the same tool so that we can come back and talk about the pros and cons. Increase the visibility, increased visibility and progress monitoring of subgroups. So that's simply saying that all the data that I looked at a few minutes ago around the subgroups, African Americans, Hispanics, special ed, and we saw like special ed, I think that 10% of our kids on grade level. So actually paying attention to that data at the subgroup level so that we can come up with the right interventions. And then lastly, co-teaching model expansion of that for special education students, where we have 2 teachers in the classroom paying attention to the needs of our special education students. As the science, won't get into all the numbers, but you can see them on the slide here. The pattern mirrors again the reading and math. Next slide, please. Similar line graph, 4.1 increase. Next slide, please. Again, when you disaggregate the numbers, you see the huge gaps that exist, in which has been persistent. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, next slide, that one. Yeah, showing that we have a long ways to go. Acceleration schools again, 7.4, significant gains there. And then we have a ways to go with them to get up to the district average. And then the next steps in science updates, science kids, professional development, increased visibility again on monitoring subgroup data and the co-teaching model for special education. So again, that was a high level overview. When the academic folks come back to town, we can get into a lot more details, but until then, what questions do you have?
I just want to say, I know we have a long way to go in just closing our disparity gaps, but these charts are so much more digestible. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Ms. Waters.
Just a comment. I just wanted to recognize Ms. Haynes and her team with the Acceleration Schools, all the Acceleration Schools principals and students who did this work to get those gains. I mean, I feel like every time we look at data, it's like, it's hard to sort of sit where you need to sit in it, right? Because there's so much work that needs to be done. And so it could be daunting or sad, but then when you see leading these results, that 7.5, 7.4 improvements, it's just phenomenal. And so I'm sure that everybody has told you, you did the thing, but you did the thing, Ms. Haynes. And you and the principals, I just appreciate y'all.
Dr. French.
So, Mr. Kennedy, thank you so much. And I agree, these are very digestible. I have a question about where we aren't meeting the needs. Do you have specific adjustments that you think need to be made in special ed and for our Hispanic and multilingual learners?
Well, so now that we have the data, as I indicated a few minutes ago, I started just taking a look at some additional detailed data. And so there's a lot of details that we have to take a look at. We have data by schools, racial groups in schools. And so the academic folks are working on that. And so at some point in the fall, we will have more details on how we would approach it.
Dr. Frazier.
I'm excited. I am so excited that we are now getting back to the basics of teaching our kids on how to read. in a day and time that our kids are being taught by TikTok and everything else out there going on, I asked a student just Friday, let me see some of your work. They just don't know anything about cursive writing. Back in the day, it was conjugating a verb. So we do have some work ahead of us. But to see this commitment coming from this administration, I just want to say I'm very proud that we have gotten back to that. I can remember back when a whole department was just torn apart. And we just got away from working on skills, the basic skills of reading. And we all know if you can read, there are all kinds of obstacles that you can overcome. So thank you, staff. I'm just overwhelmed and just proud of the work that we're doing to get our kids back on target. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, last up is item 3E, and that's just an overview of the pilot incentive package for teachers and principals in acceleration schools. Ms. Haynes.
So that's Ms. Haynes. Hi, Ms. Haynes. Yeah.
So good afternoon. Thank you. School Board Chair, Reverend Mack, Vice Chair, Ms. Waters, members of the board, and Superintendent Kennedy. We are so excited today to have this opportunity to share a compensation initiative designed to attract, retain, and incentivize teachers to work with our students needing the most support. And thank you, Ms. Waters, for that acknowledgement. The principals and teachers are working extremely hard. And yes, Dr. Frazier, this administration is committed to the work that we are doing. So thank you to Mr. Kennedy and all of the staff. So first, this initiative could not have been possible without the support of Bill Brigman, Chief of Human Resources. Thank you very much, as well as his department, Kathleen McLean and Tanya McIntyre, who used to work in acceleration schools, but then all this happened when she moved to HR. So this is great. Also, the partnership with Meeting Street Schools, they're here today. Marcus Backman, the Chief Financial Officer, if he could stand, and then Jen Jordan, the Community Director, Communications Director of Meeting Street Schools. So if we look at the first slide, as you're aware, there are levers to school turnaround. And they include definitely the leadership, but we want to focus today on talent management. Once we get the teachers, how do we attract them to our schools? How do we retain them? And we talked about, Mr. Kennedy talked about the professional development that takes place, the PLCs, the collaboration around student work, that happens in talent management. And you've heard some of the other teachers talk about the instructional practice, the PLCs and curriculum. And I think they're getting the presentation up now.
I think that shouldn't be on the screen.
Okay, there we are. So the second slide, I believe, are the levers of school turnaround. And you've seen this many times because we have to have all of these components to work with our schools and make sure that they are moving forward. So we're talking about talent management today. The plan that we have was workshopped with teachers, with administrators, principals, with the district staff in order for us to move forward. So as we go to the next slide, you will see there are 4 components, one being the base salary that all teachers receive, and then the attraction, retention, and attendance awards, which is funded by ESSER funds, and then the school-wide improvement award funded by ESSER, and then the educator performance awards, which
will be funded by our partnership with Meeting Street. And it is a pilot program for 1 year with 7 acceleration schools, grades 1 through 5. So as we look at the attraction, retention, and attendance awards, it's exciting on the next slide. So the retention award is for teachers that remain in acceleration schools, they will receive $3,000. And for classified employees, $1,500. If you interview and obtain a position in an acceleration school, a teacher, you receive a signing bonus for $2,500 for teachers. Then there's an attendance award. Often you will find in schools that are high need schools, attendance is an issue with teachers. So we're offering an attendance award. If a teacher comes to school every day for 45 days, they can receive $500 per 9 weeks, and a classified employee will receive $250 every 9 weeks. And then if you refer someone to work in an acceleration school, you will receive a $500 bonus, and that's for our teachers. On the next slide, we also have a school-wide improvement award for all staff members. Our goal is to get off of the state list. We want all of our schools in acceleration to be average, good, or excellent, really all of them excellent. So if they move one band, they will receive $1,000 per employee, moving from below average to average, 2 bands up to $2,000. And that money will be collected, provided to the school in order for them to determine, to determine how much each employee will receive. That's every employee in the school, from the cafeteria to classified employees, everyone. So that is a school-wide improvement award and incentives for all staff members. And that too will be funded by the ESSER funds. Our next slide is the Excellence in Teaching Awards. And we're really excited to have this partnership that we've entered or would like to enter with CCSD and Meeting Street. And this is an opportunity to celebrate our teachers, to recognize the growth of our students. And those participants that are in this pilot program for 1 year will be 1st through 5th grade teachers that teach ELA and math. And it is a 2-tiered system focused on classroom growth and student achievement. So let me give you a few examples of that. Here's an example of classroom growth. If we have teachers are awarded classroom growth and award for both reading and math from fall to spring. So the growth could be 1.2 years to 1.359 years could receive $2,500. And for student advancement, those awards are based on the growth of the student from 1 percentile to another percentile. And these awards are based on MAP scores growth. The next slide. So here's an example of Miss Smith. So if Miss Smith's class grows 1.7 or more than the expected historical average, she could earn $7,500. If Miss Smith's class, she moves the bottom quartile, and you have an example there of one student moving from a quartile 4, then another student from quartile 3, the total amount she could earn would be $2,250. So it is a complicated system, but a system that seems to work or has worked for Meeting Street. Now, here's an example of a principals award, because we don't want to leave out our leaders. So principals are also eligible for an award. So the complicated system, if we have 28 teachers that earned a total of the amount that is there, and making that average $10,000 plus, you take that average and multiply it by 2, and the principal maximum award could be $20,000 for what the work that they have done with the improvement of their students. And on the next slide, it is determined by the number of subjects over 1.2 in each of the grade levels, the total number of subjects, and the growth that is achieved. So a principal could earn up to $14,125 as they lead their students to success. So now we have an educator with us, our principal, Dr. Katisha Gathers, who would like to speak and hear a couple of voices. And we also have Marcus Backman, who would like to say thank you for this opportunity. And there was phenomenal growth at Dr. Gathers School this year. And wanted to say with her minority students, they outscored, the Black students outscored all demographic groups in her school.
Maybe a little emotional after that. But good afternoon, Board Chair, Dr. Reverend Mack, Vice Chair Waters, all board members and Superintendent Kennedy, and those who are streaming this meeting. I had the privilege of speaking with a few of the board members about some time ago about this Excellence in Teaching Award. And as I shared with those board members, teachers enter this profession knowing their why, and they have identified their passion early on. They want to educate students to make a difference in the lives of children. To teach at Hunley, you need not only believe in your own why, but you also need to have a strong desire to teach at a place like Hunley. We are a Title I school, an acceleration school, and we serve students who come from under-resourced communities. Our students come to us at an educational disadvantage and require our teachers to close the gap. Today, I represent those teachers who last year showed an improvement. Dr. French, she said, how does this translate to SE Ready? 10.1 percentage points increase in SE Ready in reading, a 16.2% increase in SE Ready on math. I stand before you representing those teachers who spent every Wednesday collaborating with each other to internalize lessons and plan for instruction. These teachers analyze data to change their instructional practices, and they work tirelessly to close the disparity achievement gap. They deserve this award. All teachers work hard, and I'm not here trying to minimize that hard work. I'm bringing attention to the work that is required of the teachers at an acceleration school. At a school that has been historically low performing and a school whose students have a high poverty rate, these factors bring a set of challenges that require much from our teachers. When our teachers heard that they have the potential to require or to obtain a performance-based incentive, they were thrilled. As a principal, this means that teachers are getting paid for their hard work, which happens to translate to an increase in reading and math proficiency. As a principal, it allows me to attract and attain top talent. And they deserve to be celebrated, our teachers, and for the hard work that they're doing to accelerate our students' learning. I want to thank all of you for allowing me to speak with you today and represent my teacher sentiments and those of all acceleration schools, elementary principals. Thank you.
And Mr. Backman would just like to say thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity to work with the Acceleration Schools with this pilot program. I'm truly excited to get this program on the way to truly recognize the teachers and all their hard works. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, questions?
Thank you so much. This is excellent. What questions do we have?
I have a question. Was this in place in the 21-22 school year? I'm specifically to CCSD because we were talking about CCSD principals payout.
No, it was not.
Okay.
This would be beginning this.
So this
school
is,
year.
so we haven't actually rounded a year.
Correct.
And do we know the turnover from in acceleration schools from last year to this year, the retention rate of teachers? And do you have a goal that you think you're going to meet with this? Because I mean, this is truly exciting.
It is
stuff.
very exciting. We do not have that retention information yet. We are waiting for it because at the last meeting, that was a concern, how many teachers have we retained this year from the previous year. So we're still waiting for that information, but that will be data that we will keep to see if this program works. And once ESSER funds are gone, maybe it can continue.
Thank you.
Dr. French?
Thank you. So obviously there was some phenomenal growth at Hundley Park, and that happened without this incentive program, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so we're hoping for even more.
For even more.
So obviously, it really is important that you set the goals for teacher retention and for student outcomes. And because we really need to know, is it successful or not? And everything I've heard before today consistently is that there is no data from Meeting Street Schools to support the idea that this actually has worked. So we are the guinea pigs. And so we need to make sure that we set, do this right. You need to set the goals now before we start.
Thank you, Dr. French. We are doing just that. We appreciate your feedback about the data that exists around teacher incentive pay, and we're looking closely at the results from Meeting Street, and we're working with Buffy Roberts and our assessment team, Ms. Haynes, and all of the principals that are associated with this to ensure that goals are measurable and SMART, and they're linked to student achievement and to retention. So we are certainly, and we have you on our list to help provide some feedback. Once Ms. Roberts returns this week, I think our first meetings with associates and principals are this week. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Dr. Frazier?
How can I add a school to this list? This is great. What do I have to do?
I think that's a conversation with Mr. Kennedy.
So this is a pilot program, so we will look at it next year.
And just to add, we do have a data strategist that is on a fellowship with Acceleration Schools from Harvard that is really helping us to fine tune and look at the data to make sure that it's getting us the results that we want.
I'm so excited about this board meeting. This is just really, really good stuff coming up.
And I do want to say, despite, my firm words, I do want us to have ways to pay our teachers better and be more consistent with that. It's absolutely important. And I hope we break your bank, Mr. Brockman. I hope that we see some really good results.
This is excellent.
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Wow.
Reverend Mack.
Thank you, Ms. Hederick. Item 4A, Ms. Green.
Yes, this is September meeting from the Audit and Financial Committee. You have 4 action items that you should take note of, and 3 information items, and then 1 executive session that we will be discussing at the board meeting if we need to discuss them. And if you have any questions in the meantime, you could contact Ms. Williams.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, item 5A is the community engagement process, Ms. Hederick.
Thank you, Reverend Mack. So over the next 2 weeks, we will be advertising community engagement sessions throughout our constituent districts to engage the community in establishing our goals and guardrails for the district. Ms. Denny and her team are working on a marketing strategy and advertising strategy. One thing that I want to note, we are having specific meetings across the district. We're having some at Burke High School, North Charleston High School, Lucy Beckham. Just because it's not in your district doesn't mean you cannot come to all of these meetings. So again, this list will be public. We're working along the timeline that the board approved and are excited to garner community feedback as we work on our next set of goals and guardrails for the district. Dr. French and Ms. Waters, am I missing anything?
Not logistically. The only thing that I would mention, just given the public comment concern, is one of the reasons, just to level set, that we are trying to do this expeditiously is because we feel that it's incredibly important that we have strong, data-driven, community-informed goals out in front of this district as a guiding light. And the sooner we get that in place, the sooner we can start to evaluate progress to that. And so we're doing this work quickly because we needed this yesterday. And Dr. French, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I agree that our students need this, and we are doing our best to do it with good diligence. We have put a lot of work in, and our trainers are helping us. And I guess at this point, I just want to encourage everybody on the board to sign up for session because we need everybody to be there and be listening.
Absolutely.
Yes, and the only meeting that was consolidated was our partner meeting. So we will have nonprofits, businesses, and we'll welcome them to a Zoom session. But like I said, anyone across the district, whether you live in D23, D9, are welcome to come or log into any of these sessions. Thank you, Reverend Mack.
Okay.
Are there any questions in regards to the timeline or process?
Well, I just want to point out, we do have some sessions in the D9 area, so in Hollywood. And so we are doing some things, not just in the central core of the county.
We do, but some are very specific to area, and I just want to make sure that everyone feels welcome at all of our meetings.
Okay, just for information?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Item 5B, superintendent search process.
Yes, so some of you may have seen email go back and forth. We had a deliverable in the timeline of September moving forward with superintendent search, identifying the firms. We talked with the Council of Great City Schools to kind of get clear on how we should best move forward. And we realized that according to, and there's a document attached in board docs, according to the way that they advise moving forward, is that ahead of selecting a firm, you actually identified the timeline with the board so that once seated, the firm isn't sort of guiding the effort, but that the board has already established, for instance, how long the search process will take, who will give input to building the candidate profile, et cetera. They advise that we do that at this point with the ad hoc committee, since we no longer have a superintendent ad hoc committee. And Reverend Mack, you can feel free to weigh in if you'd like to pick that up again. But at this point, this is just for information that we intend as the ad hoc committee to go ahead and start outlining that timeline to bring back to the board in October, as well as in the summer, we had identified or narrowed down 3 firms that we wanted to go back and look at, also asking that the board be prepared to make a decision about one of the firms in October. And just to be clear on why it's important to go ahead and establish the timeline as well as identify a firm is because the hiring season for superintendents is going to be that late fall, early winter timeframe. And if we wait and put it on the next board to do all of the work, we actually may miss some very valuable candidates and not have a superintendent in seat by next school year. So this is just information that we will come back to you after engaging Council of Great City Schools. And Mr. Mazik, I apologize, we hadn't talked about this yet, but they asked that we vet everything that we put in this process and make sure we do everything that's legally required. And so we'd be inviting you to a meeting along with Kim, Dr. French, Lauren, myself, to arc out that timeline and bring that back to the board. So just a note, and if you guys have any questions or concerns.
Are there any questions? Ms. Coates.
So to refresh our memories, could the ad hoc committee this week send out the information for the 3 that we selected so we can get those back in our minds?
Yes, and actually, Yes, so I'm not asking you to make a decision in October for something you won't see. What we're gonna do is take it all back to that meeting, and we'll send everything out at once so that everything kind of comes out so you can review. And I'm happy to send it. Well, I don't have it. Joyce, I guess that's a Joyce.
So, yeah, someone has it, but I off the top of my head can't remember the three.
Yeah.
And it would be good if we had those names so we can begin doing our own kind of getting
Absolutely.
prepared for that October meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. French.
And then my question was just that we also asked Mr. Mazik if he can provide a written analysis for us so that we will have something to hand off, because that way we'll.
We ain't
make sure.
approving no money on this. Just make sure you remember that, okay?
That's true. That's true. We don't ever want to pay you, Mr. Mazik.
But I do have another question. Is this included in the current contract? Because our contract with Council of Great City Schools does not include superintendent search counseling. Is there an additional charge for
No,
this?
there's not.
They're not
Perfect.
searching. yeah.
There's not.
But the counseling and the process
No.
is not, it's included.
It's included.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any further questions on that process, timeline?
Just for clarification, this is only a timeline and selecting a firm. This
Right.
is not selecting a superintendent. That will be the next board's role.
Right. It's not even building the profile.
yes.
So the community engagement piece will all happen again.
All right, Ms. Erickson, we're on item 5C. Is there any items moving to potential consent? None? Thank you. All right, item 6A is upcoming meeting.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
We still have a potential consent agenda for our regular September meeting, and this is when we would have that. Did we not have anything that was unanimous? Oh, okay. Thank you.
That's why I asked the question publicly.
But we usually, even when they're unanimous, vote. So we're not going to vote, because if it was not unanimous, we're not going to allow the board to vote into. Okay. We've done that before, but okay.
We didn't vote. Item 5A and 5B were just information only.
Right.
All right, item 6A, we have a upcoming meeting, September 26th is the regular board meeting. October 10th, it will be the committee of the whole, next committee of the whole meeting, and the 24th will be the next regular board meeting. We do have a special call meeting here after today.
And may I make, just to clarify, there's been some concerns about the special called meeting, and I am probably very vocally critical about the need for consistent special called meetings. But I think what's gotten lost in this conversation is this is merely revoting on issues. This is no new items to the meeting. So it really is sort of a formality as opposed to adding something to a special called meeting. I think that got lost in some of the public conversations.
Well, it does constitute a special call meeting simply because this is a committee of the whole meeting, and that was done
Right,
at
but
a
it's,
regular.
but we're not adding items from today. We're
Hang on,
not
hang
adding
on.
items that came
Just,
on.
are you finished? Are you
I didn't
finished?
ask a question, so I'm not sure what you're answering.
So the special call meeting is just to address the items from that was done in a regular board meeting. They are at the last July meeting, and we're having that done today so that can be officially done and properly recorded. Entertain a motion for adjournment.
There is actually one other item of contracts on
Okay,
that,
for the 250.
but that's not from July. That's just a new
There is a
item. There is
new-
one new item that was published on the agenda. Approval of contracts.
I was just addressing the July reference.
So I stand corrected. This is not merely a formality of July 18th.
All right, entertain a motion for adjournment. This meeting now officially adjourned. We will begin a special call meeting in 10 minutes. That will be at 3:50.
So Reverend Matt. Eric.
meeting to order. Entertain a motion for the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Ms. Coates,
Second.
second by Dr. French. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote.
Wait a minute, I'm still in the wrong meeting. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not in.
You're not in?
I'm not in yet. I'm trying to get in.
Is Ms. Coakley on?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, thank you.
I'm getting into the meeting.
Yes.
He's still trying to log in.
Yes, I just got it. Yes.
Okay. I had to log in also.
All right, thank you. Are we waiting on anyone else? Okay. All right, that item passes. Want to make sure it reflects everyone's vote. Item 2A is approval of projects greater than 250,000.
I move to approve.
Who moved? Ms. Coates, second by Ms. Waters. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that item passes. Well, now in convene into executive session is a motion.
You need a second?
Yes, I
Second.
do. Second. All right, moved by Ms. Waters, second by Ms. Coates. All in favor, know by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? All right, we're going to go ahead and convene into the conference room, so we'll have, make everyone exit out and come back in. Yes, we probably have to call her by phone. Ms. Coakley, we probably have to dial you in by phone. All right. All right, if we can move to the conference room and we'll be back.
Do you? Depending on you. Can you bring that sheet back for you?
You can have it. You go, this, I know this, I know this.
No, I want the board members to have it.
A, which was receipt of information, no action. We will now move to item 7A. Student Outcomes Governance Framework. This is items from 7A, B, C, and D is from our July 8th board meeting that we'll be revoting upon on today. So item 7A, is there a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the provided timeline to begin restructuring of board operations and strategic leadership.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Hedrick, second by Ms. Waters. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Ms. Green. Is Ms. Coakley back on?
There she is back.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, that item passes. For some reason, this screen here is real small today.
Yeah, it's really small.
Okay, everyone, please review and make sure that your vote is recorded. All right, we'll move to item 7B, which is the K-8 grade ELA curriculum recommendation.
Move to approve.
Okay, you want to
Second.
read that motion? Please.
Oh,
You
read
wanna
it.
Cite the motion, read the motion.
Oh, you want me to read it?
Yes.
Motion to approve the adoption of the EL Education ELA curriculum as a CCSD ELA curriculum for K through 8th grades.
Second.
All right, moved by Ms. Waters, second by Dr. French. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. All right, that item passes.
Reverend Mac, I have a question about the next item.
All right, let's get to it first. All right, item 7C is policy EBBA. All right,
This one is a little more complicated because normally policy changes require 2 readings. Do we need to move to waive the second reading?
so that would be a legal counsel question.
Is this the same motion that was read the first time? Well, if it was a violation, then this has to be the first reading.
All right,
It would
there you
have
go.
to be the first
Unless
reading.
y'all move to suspend, then I think that's a whole nother issue with.
Well, we actually,
But did
So
we
this-
not validate second reading already? Granted, we're doing it out of order, but we've already made, this is the one you and I discussed. This is already past second reading.
Okay.
So we don't, I mean, we've already passed second reading, so I don't know why we would have to do it again. We're reaffirming first reading with no, yeah, you see how it's out of order, but we went and did second reading on this in a board meeting already.
in August, yes.
So I just want to make sure that we're actually clear on this. I mean, because we are revoting from the July meeting.
At the
What,
last meeting, what was on the agenda? It was,
Approval of second reading at the most recent board meeting.
In
This went
August.
from first reading in July to second reading in August.
so we have to go back to the second reading.
Correct. So the cleanest way would be to have this for second reading, maybe
Right.
at the September 26th meeting. That would be the cleanest way, just to revote on this exact specific item.
Okay.
so this will be the first reading today, and then the
Yes.
next regular board meeting will be the second reading.
Yes.
Okay,
Is everyone clear on this?
thank you. Well, I will move to consolidate policy EBBA, GBGA, and JLCC into the attached red line policy EBBA and remove policy ADD with policies GBGA and JLCC referring to policy EBBA.
Okay, is there a second?
What was
Second.
that?
All right, moved by Dr. French, second by Ms. Waters. Are there any questions?
favorite.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hedrick.
It's okay.
Yeah. All right, moved by Dr. French, second by Ms. Hedrick. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Okay, that item passes. Item 7D.
Move to approve. Oh, my goodness. I move that we approve the development of the district policy manual that will include a. Did we change this?
We did
To
change it.
administrative
This
rule?
is not, this is not the motion that we read on that date.
Well, there may have been a friendly amendment, so I'll just verbally change it, Julie. Okay, so I move that we approve the development of the district administrative rule manual that will include a board-led review of sections A and C through L of the current board policy manual to determine which policies need to be migrated to the administrative or governing sections of the board's policy manual, as well as which policies the board is legally required to retain in its manual, with the understanding that the first step of this review process be handled by the superintendent to make recommendations for the board's review.
One more.
What?
So it's what's in board docs, except changing the word district policy manual to district administrative rule manual. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, so everyone just taken up, well, it's been moved by Ms. Waters. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hedrick. So take an opportunity to review the motion that has been moved and seconded before casting your vote. Yes, ma'am.
So.
Re-enter, I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. You don't have my vote. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Okay, that item passes. Entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
This meeting is now officially adjourned.
I just don't believe